fourth person dies from the new coronavirus in China as millions of people prepare to travel around the country for family reunions during the Spring Festival. With Donald Trump's impeachment trial to begin this Tuesday, Majority Leader Mitch McConnell sets plans for a speedy trial aimed at acquittal. Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, meanwhile, calls it nothing short of a national disgrace. And Lebanese security officials vow a crackdown after protests turned violent at the weekend. Hundreds of people were injured as frustrations about a deepening financial crisis boiled over. For those of you just joining us, welcome to the France 24 newsroom in Paris. I'm Alexander Rawcott. Now, beginning in China, a fourth person has died from a new coronavirus that originated in the city of Wuhan and has now spread to other cities, including Shanghai and Beijing. This in a month that will see the mass migration of millions of people during the Chinese New Year, when people travel vast distances back home for family reunions. The authorities are using screening technology at airports and train stations to try to detect anyone who might have contracted the SARS-like virus. Peter O'Brien explains.
At a train station in Wuhan, central China, passengers' temperatures are checked as part of increased monitoring. A Chinese government expert has confirmed that a new rapidly spreading virus, which causes a type of pneumonia, is transmissible between humans.
There are two patients in Guangdong who had not been to Wuhan, but caught the virus after their family members came back from Wuhan.
There's been a sharp increase in confirmed cases. Now there's more than 220, most of these in Wuhan. State media has reported that some medical workers helping patients with the virus have also been infected. The Chinese president says curbing the outbreak is a top priority. It hasn't deterred millions from packing into trains and heading home for Chinese New Year, but people are worried.
I trust the government, but I'm still scared because there's no cure for the virus.
I think it should be okay as long as we take personal protection measures.
In Thailand, Japan and South Korea, some people who visited Wuhan have been reported infected. The World Health Organization is holding a meeting on Wednesday to assess whether the outbreak is an international emergency.
Now, before impeachment hearings against Donald Trump begin in the Senate this Tuesday, the Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has proposed a condensed two-day calendar as he pushes for a speedy trial towards acquittal of the charges against the U.S. president. The four-page resolution is raising objections from Democrats accusing Trump of corrupt conduct aimed at cheating in this year's election. Julia Kim takes a look now at the case against him so far.
It started with a complaint from an anonymous whistleblower, flagging up a phone call made on the 25th of July between President Donald Trump and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky. It detailed concerns that Trump was pressuring Ukraine to investigate Democratic presidential frontrunner Joe Biden by withholding nearly $400 million in military aid. 2 months after that phone call, Democratic House Speaker Nancy Pelosi launched a formal impeachment inquiry.
The actions of the Trump presidency revealed the dishonorable fact of the president's betrayal of his oath of office, betrayal of our national security, and betrayal of the integrity of our elections. Therefore, today, I'm announcing the House of Representatives moving forward with an official impeachment inquiry.
Multiple officials were called to testify. Despite the White House forbidding him from doing so, the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, gave his account.
Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes.
President Trump was quick to deny Sondland's claims.
I say to the ambassador in response, I want nothing, I want nothing. I want no quid pro quo.
After a 2-month inquiry, House Democrats in December unveiled 2 impeachment charges known as articles for abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. 1 week before Christmas, the Democrat-controlled House of Representatives voted to impeach Donald Trump. Then, on the 15th of January, the articles of impeachment were delivered to the Senate, triggering only the 3rd impeachment trial of a U.S. president.
There have been chaotic scenes on the border between Mexico and Guatemala when Mexican National Guardsmen forced back a new caravan of Central Americans trying to force themselves into the country. Around 3,500 migrants in all massed to start wading across a river that divides the two countries, demanding that migration authorities let them continue their journey north to the United States. Around 200 who did make it across were later detained.
A sign of desperation. After being told they wouldn't be granted passage to the United States, hundreds stormed into Mexico by wading across a river on the border with Guatemala. Some were forced back with tear gas, and some who managed to break through were detained. The migrants are fleeing poverty and gang violence.
I'm a mother, a single mother, and I left my daughter at home. I have to support her. We just want to work.
Because of the gang violence in El Salvador, there's no work. You can't pay for food or school for your kids.
Under the threat of US sanctions, Mexico has stopped allowing migrants to cross its territory unimpeded. The government has offered them work in the south of the country, but says they won't be granted safe conduct to the US. More than 1,000 are currently being processed in Mexican immigration centres. The government says the majority will likely be deported. At least 4,000 have entered Guatemala from Honduras since Wednesday, in one of the biggest surges since 3 Central American governments agreed to help stem the flow of migrants to the US. Before then, 2 caravans successfully reached the US, one last year and one the year before.
The Lebanese authorities have vowed to crack down on rioters after anti-government rallies taking place since mid-October turned violent over the weekend. Amid a political stalemate and deepening economic crisis, demonstrators who've been peaceful until now called for a week of rage. Clashes saw protesters throwing stones and fireworks at riot police, who responded with tear gas and rubber bullets, leaving more than 500 people injured on both sides. Nicholas Rushworth has the latest.
Lebanon's emergency security meeting included the heads of the 4 main security services, as well as ministers. Called by President Michel Aoun, it ended with a statement saying peaceful protesters would be protected, as would property. But subversive elements would be deterred. That after hundreds of people were injured in clashes over the weekend. The country has been without a government since Saad al-Hariri resigned on the 29th of October in the face of mass protests. The protesters say they are not giving up.
The more security forces step up their violence, the more our strength and determination grows. We insist on continuing until we achieve our demands. The most important are independence of the judiciary, an independent government of competent people, accountability, returning looted money, and early elections.
The political crisis and street fighting have shattered confidence in Lebanon's banks and raised investor concerns about Lebanon's ability to repay its foreign debt. Caretaker Prime Minister Saad al-Hariri says Lebanon needs to quickly form a new government to stop a cycle of collapse. With political factions still squabbling, he says the country is moving towards the unknown.
Well, there have also been bloody clashes in Iraq, where 6 people were killed nationwide, including 2 police officers, with scores of others injured. In Baghdad, 2 protesters died after being shot by live rounds fired by police, while a third succumbed to his injuries after being hit by a gas canister. The anti-government demos resumed this Monday after a lull of several weeks, as Alison Sargent explains.
They were in the streets before dawn, and security forces were ready, firing tear gas and live rounds at the young Iraqis, determined to block the capital's main roads and bridges.
We want a response to our demands. Jobs, safety, to feel like real citizens. There are no jobs, no schools, no good education, nothing. When we graduate, we sit at home.
Protesters worry their movement is being forgotten, eclipsed by soaring tension between Iraq's main benefactors, the United States and Iran. Last week, they gave the government until Monday to meet their demands: early elections under a newly passed electoral law, an independent prime minister to replace Adel Abdelmahdi, who resigned amid protests in November, and accountability for corruption. If the government fails to respond, they vow to escalate their actions, risking a deadly crackdown.
Security forces must stop shooting at us. Look at who we are. Both sides are Iraqi. Why are you killing your brothers?
Since the beginning of the movement in October, over 400 people have been killed and thousands of others injured.
And what's been dubbed the Luanda Leaks, the consortium of investigative journalists has published a huge investigation into the alleged corruption of Africa's richest businesswoman. Isabel dos Santos, the daughter of Angola's former president, has been accused of abusing her position of power to siphon off vast amounts of public money. Well, attention is now also focusing on Western individuals and companies that might have helped her. Erin Oginkie has the story.
With the release of more than 700,000 financial and business records known as the Luanda Leaks, Isabel dos Santos stands accused of plundering Angola's state funds and moving the money abroad for personal gain. But she didn't do it alone. Analysts say the documents reveal both the apparent corruption of dos Santos as well as the complicity of Western firms.
The other side of the story is us in the West receiving this money, handling this money, aiding and abetting these crimes that are going on. And it's fantastic that we've seen so much attention to the enablers, the intermediaries, the consulting firms, the big four accounting firms, the bankers who are actively soliciting this money, trying to get this money out. They're helping it out. They're helping capital flight, helping the draining and the looting of Africa.
The Luanda leak documents show how the professional services industry, which includes international consultants, accountants, and lawyers, helped Isabel dos Santos hide her fortune abroad. The files also reveal that Western consulting firms ignored red flags about the source of her wealth. Several international banks had gradually refused to work with the dos Santos family over such concerns. In response to the recent revelations, PwC said it was, quote, disappointed about its past dealings with the Angolan businesswoman.
We started our own investigation, and we have, in fact, now ceased doing work for her and the organizations around her. We continue the investigation that's going on right now. More to come in the story.
Unlike banks, international consulting firms are subject to few legal requirements or regulations to vet their clients. Several such companies have been accused of working for authoritarian or corrupt regimes, often benefiting from steep consulting fees.
Ahead of the World Economic Forum in Davos starting this Tuesday, Oxfam has released a shocking report about staggering global inequality. In its Time to Care paper, the international charity said the issue needs to be tackled at a moment when people are protesting in more than 30 countries around the world over inequality. James Wilson has the details.
With the annual gathering of the super-rich at the World Economic Forum beginning today in Davos, Switzerland, Oxfam have released their annual report into the state of poverty around the world, laying bare the inequities of global wealth distribution. It finds that 2,153 billionaires have more money than 60% of the world's population, whilst 42% of women do not have a paying job because of their work in the home. In fact, the world's richest 22 men have more money than all Africa's 326 million women put together.
If you just look around the world, more than 30 countries are seeing protests. People are on the streets, and what are they saying? That they're not going to accept this inequality.
The report urges governments to increase taxes on the world's richest citizens, but also focuses on the need to take action on climate change. Both the Swedish climate change activist Greta Thunberg and US President Donald Trump are scheduled to attend the Swiss summit. Whilst many countries have committed to reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050, there is still disagreement on how to get there, and scepticism that the target will be achieved.
We're going to end in Sri Lanka, where an attempt to break the record for the largest gathering of twins has failed because too many people turned up. Over 6,000 pairs ranging from 3 months to 89 years old registered during a 5-hour period, which would have smashed a 1999 record set by Taiwan. But the overwhelmed organisers were unable to properly deal with the influx and meet the strict rules set by the Guinness World Records. This included getting all the twins to pose for a group photo. We'll leave you with these pictures. Stay tuned to France 24.